Have you ever noticed how your body seems to betray you after a period of heartbreak or prolonged stress? Perhaps it starts as a subtle fatigue, a nagging ache in your chest, or the sudden eruption of strange rashes. For centuries, we've been told to separate mind from body, to believe that emotions are fleeting clouds and illness is born solely from bacteria or genes. Yet, modern science is quietly revealing a more complicated and far more intriguing story. What if the wounds we cannot see are the very ones quietly shaping our future health? What if the ghosts of grief, betrayal, and fear are, in fact, haunting us through our arteries, immune cells, and bones? For many, this connection seems counterintuitive. Emotions, after all, feel weightless. How could they possibly cause something as concrete as disease? But as researchers dig deeper, the old dichotomy of mind and body begins to blur. The term psychosomatic was once wielded dismissively, as if suggesting that sufferers of mysterious ailments were somehow inventing their pain. Today, that label is being reclaimed, not as a dismissal, but as a clue. The psyche and the soma, mind and body, are more entangled than we ever dared to imagine. To understand how emotional scars can manifest as physical disease, we must first look at how our bodies process pain, not just the kind caused by a twisted ankle or a fever, but the slow, relentless ache of the heart. Emotional wounds are the aftermath of trauma, the shock of a loss, the sting of rejection, the simmering anxiety of a world that feels unsafe. Unlike physical wounds, these scars don't scab over or fade with time. Instead, they can fester, lingering beneath the surface as chronic stress. Chronic stress is not just an unpleasant feeling. It's a state of biological siege. The body is exquisitely sensitive to threat, whether real or imagined. In response, our brains trigger a cascade of hormones, cortisol, and adrenaline designed to help us flee or fight. In the short term, this stress response can save our lives. But when stress becomes a permanent fixture, those very chemicals begin to corrode us from within. Blood pressure rises, inflammation spreads. The immune system, meant to defend us, turns traitor, attacking our own tissues or leaving us vulnerable to infection. Consider the mounting evidence linking emotional trauma to heart disease. After the loss of a loved one, the risk of a heart attack spikes dramatically, a phenomenon so striking that it's sometimes called broken heart syndrome. Survivors of childhood neglect or abuse are more likely to develop high blood pressure, coronary artery disease, and even sudden cardiac death. One study found that people who endured multiple adverse childhood experiences were at least twice as likely to suffer from heart problems as adults. The heart, it seems, remembers what the mind tries to forget. But the heart is not the only organ to bear the mark of invisible wounds. Autoimmune disorders, once thought to be purely genetic accidents, now appear to be shaped in part by our emotional histories. Lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis. These are conditions where the immune system attacks the body it is meant to protect. Researchers have found that people with a history of trauma, particularly in childhood, are more likely to develop such diseases later in life. The proposed mechanism is both sobering and astonishing. Chronic stress alters the delicate balance of immune function, making the body more prone to attack itself. Even the gut, that so-called second brain, is susceptible to the whispers of emotional distress. Irritable bowel syndrome, inflammatory bowel disease, and chronic pain syndromes are all more common in those who have weathered storms of trauma. The brain and gut are in constant dialogue. When one is unsettled, the other responds in kind. It is no wonder, then, that emotional wounds can manifest as nausea, cramps, or debilitating digestive problems. Perhaps most haunting is the effect of childhood trauma. The early years of life are a time of astonishing vulnerability and plasticity. A child exposed to chronic stress, neglect, or violence is not just marked psychologically, but biologically. Their brains grow differently, their hormonal systems adapt to danger, and their immune systems are tuned for survival, sometimes at the expense of long-term health. Studies have shown that the echoes of childhood trauma can persist for decades, raising the risk of chronic illnesses from diabetes to depression, from heart disease to cancer. Yet, this story is not only one of doom. The very mechanisms that allow trauma to shape our bodies also grant us the power to heal. Emerging research shows that healing emotional wounds through therapy, mindfulness, social connection, and creative expression can lead to measurable improvements in physical health. Psychotherapy has been shown to lower inflammation markers, reduce blood pressure, and even slow the progression of autoimmune disease. Practices like meditation or journaling can gently recalibrate a nervous system locked in survival mode, helping the body remember what it means to feel safe. We are, at our core, storytellers shaped not just by our genes, but by our experiences and the meaning we assign to them. Emotional pain may be invisible to the naked eye, but its traces are everywhere, woven into the fabric of our bodies. By acknowledging the wounds we carry and seeking to heal them, we do not just lighten our emotional burdens, we may, quite literally, save our own lives. As you reflect on the invisible scars you may bear, ask yourself, how might your own story be etched into your health? And how, with compassion and courage, can you begin to write a new chapter, one where unseen wounds become sources of strength and wisdom rather than seeds of disease? For in understanding the mysterious bond between mind and body, we uncover not just the roots of illness, but the profound potential for healing that resides within us all. The narrative of how emotional trauma reshapes our health does not end with the acknowledgement of harm. It extends into the realms of recovery and growth, offering hope in place of resignation. While the legacy of old wounds can be daunting, the science of healing suggests that our bodies, like our minds, possess a remarkable capacity for renewal. Central to this transformation is the recognition that healing is both a biological and a psychological process. Just as trauma can program the body for illness, so too can restorative experiences help to rewrite those scripts. The simple act of telling one's story, of giving voice to pain rather than letting it fester in silence, can begin to quiet the alarms set off by past wounds. Studies on expressive writing and therapy reveal that when people process and make sense of traumatic experiences, their levels of stress hormones decrease and their immune function improves. It is as though the body breathes easier when the truth is spoken, when the past is brought into the light and faced with honesty. Equally powerful is the role of connection. Social bonds serve as a protective buffer against the ravages of stress. Humans are wired for community. We thrive on empathy, support, and understanding. Research shows that people who maintain strong, trusting relationships recover more quickly from illness and even live longer. Conversely, those who are isolated or unsupported experience amplified effects of both emotional and physical distress. In the presence of genuine connection, the body's stress response settles, and the slow work of healing can begin. Mindfulness and self-compassion also play crucial roles. Practices that cultivate present-moment awareness, such as meditation, deep breathing, or mindful movement, teach the nervous system to unlearn old patterns of hypervigilance. Over time, these approaches reduce inflammation, regulate heartbeat, and restore healthy sleep. Self-compassion, meanwhile, counters the corrosive effects of self-blame and shame that often accompany emotional wounds. By treating ourselves with the kindness we might offer a friend, we signal to our bodies that the threat has passed and healing is possible. Finally, creative expression through art, music, movement, or writing can unlock avenues of recovery that words alone cannot reach. Creative activities activate regions of the brain associated with pleasure and reward, reduce markers of stress, and foster a sense of agency. In moments of creativity, we reclaim ownership of our narratives, transforming suffering into meaning and chaos into order. None of these pathways erases the reality of illness or the scars of past trauma. Yet, by acknowledging the profound links between mind and body, we create space for new possibilities. Healing is rarely linear and seldom easy, but it is real. Each small step, seeking support, telling our stories, nurturing our minds and bodies, becomes a quiet act of rebellion against the tyranny of old wounds. If the scars of trauma can alter our biology, then surely acts of healing can do the same. The question is no longer whether emotional pain shapes our bodies, but how we will choose to respond. Will we allow unseen wounds to dictate our future, or will we dare to imagine and work toward a life defined not by suffering, but by resilience and renewal? Though science has illuminated the dark pathways by which emotional scars become embedded in our cells, the most profound lesson may be that suffering is not the end of the story. Across cultures and generations, people have transformed pain into wisdom, despair into compassion, and loss into a new sense of purpose. In this sense, our wounds can become teachers rather than tyrants. Society, too, has a role to play in this collective healing. The stigmas surrounding mental health and trauma too often push people into silence, as if invisible wounds are somehow less deserving of care than broken bones or fevers. But as we understand more about how deeply intertwined the mind and body truly are, these old prejudices begin to look both cruel and irrational. To break the cycle, we must create spaces where vulnerability is met with empathy and support, where conversations about pain are as welcome as those about physical ailments. Healthcare systems are slowly beginning to adapt, integrating mental health screenings into routine care and encouraging providers to look beyond symptoms and ask about life stories. This holistic approach recognizes that treating disease without addressing the emotional landscape in which it developed is not enough. Just as a gardener tends both the soil and the leaves, we must nurture both body and soul to foster genuine well-being. On an individual level, the journey of healing starts with listening to ourselves, to our bodies, and to the quiet messages carried by fatigue, pain, or unease. Rather than numbing or ignoring these signals, we can learn to treat them as invitations to deeper self-understanding. Sometimes the most powerful medicine is not a pill, but a conversation, an act of kindness, or a moment of honest self-reflection. Ultimately, the story of unseen wounds and real diseases is not just one of pathology, but of possibility. By turning toward our pain with curiosity and care, by seeking connection and creative outlets, and by honoring the complex interplay between mind and body, we step onto the path of transformation. We cannot erase the storms of the past, but we can choose how we respond to their aftermath, planting seeds of healing that may one day bloom into strength, empathy, and a more vibrant life.